This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. So let's just jump right into it. He didn't, the big story that he covered this week is that AEW is now working with AAA and CMLL. To me, as somebody who only knows one Mexican wrestler, Tessa Blanchard, who works for CMLL, and I know that Conan's affiliated with AAA and Vampiro are affiliated with AAA. That's the extent of my wrestling knowledge. So, to be honest, I didn't care too much about that. The basic of it is money talks, and Tony Khan was able to smooth out whatever issues they may have had from having wrestlers on the same events through the billions of dollars that his family has. Becky Lynch is now officially a free agent. Of course, Seth Rollins is her husband, who has re-signed with WWE. But Becky Lynch, I would say there's a good chance we may see her in AEW. Tommy Dreamer said it. She could do one match and put Sasha Banks over. I mean, they could offer her a match. We all know Tony Khan supposedly pays John Moxley and the Young Bucks $6 million a year. Supposedly, Sasha Banks is making $4.5 million a year. Okada supposedly making $4.5 million a year, and these are from reports. And then Will Ospreay, who headlined the second lowest collision of the week last week, the second lowest ever rated collision of the week. He's supposedly making millions. Even though none of those people, the Young Bucks, I will say, I mean, they were part of the beginnings of AEW. I get it. John Moxley has been a mainstay in AEW, even though he wrestles in New Japan more than AEW this year. But they could offer Becky Lynch, who supposedly her last contract was for $3.1 million in WWE. They could offer her a large amount of money to have one match or a short-term contract. To me, Becky Lynch would be more valuable than Seth Rollins would have been. Becky Lynch is more known, and it would at least pop a few ratings to have her part of the roster, and she could draw the most against Sasha Banks. So to me, they should make her an offer she can't refuse, at least a short-term offer, because WWE would still take her back. Let's say she did 1 year in AEW. She could do one match. Technically, she could do one match for anyone she wants if the offer was right. But she could do a year in AEW, then go back to WWE, and she'd probably be more famous out of it because people like big stars jumping back and forth. Chris Jericho said it. Chris Jericho has also said AEW needs more big stars. Let's face the facts here. MJF is the biggest star AEW has created by far. Who, by the way, AEW signed his girlfriend Alicia Atout to an announcer deal last week. But there hasn't been that many. There's been some mid card stars like Eddie Kingston created. Um, Wardlow at one point was looking good, but it seems like they gave up on him. But there hasn't really been any major stars, so they need to bring in the major stars from outside. So if I was AEW and I was Tony Khan, I would, as Tommy Dreamer said, I would break the bank to get Sasha Banks. For God's sake, get rid of about 40 of your wrestlers that you're not using. I mean, apparently they just released Paige Van Zant from AEW this week, and they hadn't used her in 2 years of her contract, which is just crazy. it's like it's all in the news that they're getting a deal to come to Arlington, Texas, to an arena that's going to be set up for 1,200. As if that makes a difference when you're paying so many people to just sit at home. Wouldn't it be a better savings to not let people ride out their contracts and to release them? But Tony Khan's a nice guy. He lets people ride out their contracts. Shout out to Rusev, who gets paid in the hundreds of thousands a year for doing nothing. In other WWE news, Clash in the Castle in Scotland is not sold out. There's about 10,000 tickets out, 1,102 left. So you would think the first pay-per-view in Scotland, maybe the very first ever pay-per-view for wrestling in Scotland for WWE, and it's not sold out. SmackDown the night before has 8,547 tickets out, 2,572 left. Apparently, Chad Gable, who is a wrestler that I have absolutely no interest in watching just because he's small. And for some reason, I just have zero interest in watching small wrestlers. And I mean, I respect him as an amateur wrestler and stuff, but um, between him and Otis is entertaining. Chad Gable, I find boring as hell, but supposedly his contract is expiring. He's getting the biggest push of his career in WWE right now, but AEW is interested in him. Of course, AEW is interested in him. He's a small wrestler. They love small wrestlers. They have some good big guys, but it seems like they don't push them as much as they do the smaller guys. Rhea Ripley is not having shoulder surgery in the end. She's rehabbing it and should be back by SummerSlam. That's the other thing for Becky Lynch. Obviously, Rhea Ripley is the woman of the future for WWE. I think she's only about 26, and I would say, like, Becky Lynch is over, but Rhea Ripley is more over, and Rhea Ripley would not vacated the women's championship. She wouldn't have lost the women's championship in all likelihood had she not been injured. And it's funny, it's funny that they had her vacate the title, where if she didn't need shoulder surgery, Becky Lynch probably could have pinned her. You could have a quick match and pin someone. Hell, remember when Dynamite Kid broke his back and they made him like still get pretty much dragged out to the ring just so the Bulldogs could lose the titles? That's an indication to me that they did not want Becky Lynch beating Rhea Ripley, but they thought Becky Lynch was the best women's championship to hold on to it and pass it to the next person. Um, but yeah, it's funny that if it's not even a bad enough shoulder injury to require surgery, that she had to vacate the title. Aren't wrestlers supposed to be tough? Anyways, I wrestled with a torn pec. And I've wrestled with a lot of injuries over the years, but I'm a nobody. I'm just a professional YouTuber and a very successful, well, I wouldn't say extremely successful wrestling promoter, but decently successful wrestling promoter. As Great North Wrestling, the company I started back in 2007, is still going on in some form today. Shout out to our events August 31st in Petawawa and June 29th in Napanee. Which, by the way, the Warlord's coming to Petawawa, as well as another ex-WWE superstar. The weekend house shows WWE last weekend, June 1st in White Plains, New York, where I've driven through a bunch of times, had 4,295. June 2nd in Binghamton, New York, another town I've driven through a bunch of times, 4,274. Binghamton, whenever I drive to New Jersey, I drive through that. SmackDown in Albany, another town I've driven through a bunch of times. They were in a 17,500 seat arena, and they had 7,797 fans. Raw in Hershey, Pennsylvania, over 9,000 fans, 9,176. The A&E biography episode on Eddie Guerrero, one of the lowest drawing WWE champions of all time, had only a 0.05 rating, which was the lowest number in the history of A&E biography. It was the previous record low was the week before, which was a 0.07 about Steve Austin's quote-unquote final match against Kevin Owens. The reason, and all the previous lows that hadn't done before, below a 0.10. So for the Eddie Guerrero was half of that, half of the previous record low, and Austin was 0.07 on his last match against Owens. The reason why, like, it was nice. I still haven't seen that match, and I'm a Steve Austin fan. That's how little interest I had in that match. It's nice that he came and did a little thing, but there was no build to that match. And other than him returning, nothing memorable happened in it. So that's why people don't care about it and why it did a bad rating. AEW Collision in Palm Desert, Florida, 2,800. That is the one that did a 0.11 rating. Second lowest of the year, with Will Ospreay in the main event. AEW Dynamite and Rampage tapings in Loveland, Colorado, outside of Denver. This week, 2,600, including comps. It came out that for the Winnipeg Dynamite, which, despite it being Omega, Jericho, and Don Callis' hometown, they had 1,268 comps and only had a little over 5,000 tickets sold in an 18,000 seat arena. Chris Jericho in his hometown, they still needed to give out over 1,200 comps. Wow. Penta's contract with AEW expires in August or September. WWE is interested in him. He's interested in exploring other options. AEW is apparently still interested in Ross and Marshall Von Erich, especially since they're running the Dallas area for almost 2 months this summer, but they have not signed yet. Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics discovered that they have a deal to run that arena 6 or 7 times this summer in Arlington, Texas, for only $232,000. The setup will be about $1,200. TNA did not hit a rating this week. On April 30th. They don't have the ratings for this week yet. April 30th, TNA, I guess they had under 19,000 viewers, and you need 19,000 to hit a you need 17,000 to hit a 0.01. So they did not get enough viewers to make a rating. Apparently, there's a lot of concern from talent that nobody knows what's going on with TNA and WWE, and a lot of key people in TNA have been fired. David Sahaldi, who had been in charge of production, was let go. He was also a creative director, the creative director and TV director for a very long time. Lou D'Angelo, who was the vice president of marketing, was also let go. There's interviews with both David Sahaldi and Lou D'Angelo on the Hannibal TV if anyone wants to check them out. Lou was in charge of booking the arenas. His assistant was also let go, and there's been a lot of other executives let go in recent months. The Mike Tyson Logan Paul fight has been postponed indefinitely. Sorry, the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight, I should say. And of course, the big news of the week was Conor McGregor's UFC 303 press conference in Ireland was mysteriously canceled this week. It got a lot of publicity that it was canceled, probably more than the press conference would have had. Chael Sonnen, for whatever it's worth, believes the fight is still going to happen. But there's a lot of people saying McGregor's been partying a lot, and it's weird that they had 12,000 tickets out to this thing and this press conference in Ireland, and the star didn't show up. Paul versus Tyson moved to November 15th. There's some breaking news from Mop Shop. Thank you very much. Please subscribe and give this a thumbs up. We're up to over 382,000 subscribers now on the Hannibal TV. Have a great weekend, and I'm going to do a review right now of Tank Abbott's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, because Tank Abbott is a friend of mine, and I was really happy he made it on there.